Very nice. I find the story to be more and more interesting as we proceed. So we stopped at this point and I continue from the very same spot. He took directions from them to reach the village and was with them on the appointed day. The village was set far into the jungle, a single street and about 30 homes of bricks or just thatched huts. That was the village. A single street and about 30 homes of bricks or just thatched huts. That's it. And a lot of cattle and sheep, mostly a pastoral community. He had got in a small car, but he had to leave it on the main highway and walk down to the village, which was full of excitement. Women and children stood around him. Most of the men were out working in the fields. Seeing Captain's grey uniform, the boys cried, "The police have come, police have come," and ran around to fetch the men who recognized him and cried, "Oh, it's our hunter who is going to kill the tiger." So they all gathered. Captain corrected them, "I am not going to kill them, but to take him away." Some rushed into their homes and brought out ancient stools and benches and offered him seats. Some brought him tender coconut and chipped off the top and offered him a drink. See what hospitality. Others brought him papaya and banana. Captain felt overwhelmed by their hospitality and promised, "I will see that you are not bothered by the tiger. But you must all help me. I must know where he is and how he comes and goes and where he keeps himself during the day." "Oh, that is difficult, sir. If we follow him, he may turn round and attack us." "If you don't tell me where the tiger is, how can I catch him? I may also begin to think, like those officials, that you're all just imagining about the tiger." No, 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 it is real. Even 2 days ago, two fellows who were out to cut wood were mutilated. One fellow lost an arm. So will you take me to him? No, not in our village, but there on the other side of this hill. Will you come with me and show me the man and where he was attacked so that I may find out the tiger's movements? Strangely, they seem to be averse to this procedure. The victims of the tiger seem to be as elusive as the tiger itself. that is amusing. The victims of the tiger seemed as elusive as the tiger itself. They would complain and pour forth their grievances, but somehow at the same time, show reluctance to help him directly. They would not be explicit about the attacks, but Captain would not give up. He changed his tactics. He contacted the forest guards, offered a fee for information about the tiger, followed their tips. Leaving much of his circus work to his chief executive, he unrelentingly pursued the tiger and finally arrived at the rivulet beyond which was the cave at the tail end of the Mempi range. Captain had taken special precautions to camouflage himself with certain types of foliage. He hoisted himself onto the branch of a tree and stayed there all night in the company of the forest guards and finally had a glimpse of the tiger returning to his cave. So we have made some progress there. Although I was cautious and avoided all the traps laid, now this is the tiger speaking. Although I was cautious and avoided all the traps laid for me, ultimately I yielded to a temptation, and that proved to be the end. After trying many hideouts, I had come back to my original home. As I emerged from my lair late one evening, passing through the long grass, I heard a bleating, and following the sound, saw a well-fed goat in front of me. I hesitated only a moment, looked about, took a leap, and landed on its back. At the same time, I heard a strange, unfamiliar, clattering noise. An iron door came down and shut me in. I was trapped. I was at once surrounded by unfamiliar figures and heard strange voices. A flashlight was pointed at me, and a man was saying, "Just what I was looking for. A magnificent fellow. Mr. Captain, isn't he rather big for our purpose?" "No, no, no, he's just right. Only we may have to starve him for a while." "Will you be able to make him obedient?" "Of course," said the other. "You will see. I'll make him a star." "It seems to me he is too heavy for our purpose." "He is all right. He'll become slim and agile. Leave it to me." Then he turned round and said to someone, "Pay off all the men who have helped us in trapping. Give them an extra tip, but make sure that their services are terminated. Keep the 6 men from our own staff, and they will take care of the business of wheeling this cage to the town. It may take 4 days if drawn by bullocks. All along the way, crowds will watch and follow. That will be an excellent advertisement for our circus." My master later in my life had mentioned hell, describing the conditions that would give one a feel of it. Now, recollecting the day of my trapping and the journey onwards, I realize its meaning. The trap was narrow, and I felt cribbed and cramped. I, who had lived a full and free life, stretching myself as I pleased, or burying myself in the jungle grass. Now I had to keep standing as the trap on the wheels was drawn along. I had to keep standing as the trap on wheels was drawn along. A pair of bullocks was yoked to it, and the driver kept yelling and whipping them. The wheels rolled on rough ground, and I was jolted from side to side. I felt strangely uncomfortable to be moving without the use of my legs. First time experiencing locomotion. They had screened the trap with a lot of foliage so that I might not see the bullocks or the driver. They had some irrational fear that if I saw them, I might want to eat them up. They forgot that the goat, which was the bait, was still in my company, although not alive. Through many villages and towns they took me. My captors walked along behind the cage. Now and then they stopped under a wayside tree and unyoked the bullocks to give them rest. At such times, the front portion of the carriage rested on the ground, and the floor sloped forward, and I kept sliding down, with the remains of the goat flowing over me. It was uncomfortable, and I had to roar out my displeasure. The noise I made scared the spectators surrounding my cage and sent them running. My guards broke into laughter and shouted at the crowd, "If you are so scared of the tiger locked up in the cage, what will you do when we open the door and let it out?" This was their way of joking, and then much talk, inevitable wherever human beings are gathered. For one used to the grand silence of the jungle, the noisy nature of humanity was distressing, to say the least. In due course, I got used to it. When I imbibed my master's lessons, I realized that deep within I was not different from human beings, and I got into their habit myself, and never had a moment's silence or stillness of mind. I was either talking in my own way, inaudibly, or listening, and thus became fully qualified to enter human society. After days, how many I don't know, and could not reckon, We came to a stop. The sides of the cage were still screened with brambles and foliage, and I had no idea where we were. I only heard, as usual, a lot of talk and shouting and counter shouting and much movement outside. Suddenly, all the twigs and foliage screening the cage were torn away, and I saw through the bars a new world such as I could never have imagined in my life. A stretch of land with no trees or rocks, or long grass, or bamboo clusters, or lantana bushes, or other undergrowth, but bare and clean ground as far as I could see, ending in what I learned was a big tent surrounded by smaller tents and shacks, the whole ground swarming with bipeds. I had no notion that the earth contained so many human creatures. Naturally, they all stared and gaped and talked. I tried to head my way out by pushing and hurt myself in the attempt. Now I saw a man with a long staff in hand standing close by saying, "Want to get out? All right, come on." And he poked with his staff and laughed when I protested. Ah, what a beautiful voice! If you were a singer, you could enchant an audience of thousands with a mic, and laughed at his own joke. Others laughed with him too. I learned later that they were obliged to laugh at his jokes, being his subordinates. As I went along, I learned that he was the owner of the circus. He was the one who met me when I was trapped, and he was to be my commander for years to come. He now poked the staff through the bars and was greatly amused when I jumped about in pain and in confusion. He said with a guffaw, "Ah, you are a promising dancer too." He turned to his assistant and said, "Let us advertise a tiger Bharatanatyam, something that no circus has ever attempted." "Yes, sir, that's an excellent idea, sir," said Captain's yes man, who was always by his side, agreeing with everything he said, his second in command. "We will teach this fellow every accomplishment in due course," said Captain. "But our immediate job is to drive him into the other cage, which is going to be his new home." He prodded me with his staff and hit me to the accompaniment of stentorian commands. I was hear the voice again and again in the years to come. Also, he drew the staff along the cage's bars, creating a rat-tat-tat-tat noise which confused me. When I tried to understand what it meant, he withdrew the staff and jabbed my side with it. I was miserable and did not know where to keep myself. He gave me no rest, but drove me round and round with that staff in the narrow space, till in sheer desperation, edging away from the probing stick, I dashed on and found myself in another cage, where the door immediately came down. This was my first act of obedience. Captain now withdrew his staff and said, "Ah, good, stay there." He said to his yes man, "Take the other cage for cleaning. Awful mess, stinks to the high heavens." As night fell, I could see more clearly. I heard a lion roar, and the voices of other jungle fellows, and over all that, of course, human talk in different keys. I saw only empty grounds before me and the glow of lights somewhere. I was bewildered and did not know why I was brought here or what they were planning to do with me. Captain and his yes man would come off and on and stand looking at me, say something between themselves, and then leave. It was irksome to stay in that cramped space all day and night, my only activity being lying down and getting up, again lying down and getting up, stretching myself to the extent possible, and turning round and round, grumbling and whining. But no one cared. Being used to the vastness and freedom of jungle life, I found this an impossible condition of living. I could do nothing more than pace up and down in despair. For 3 days, I did not feel hungry. On the fourth day, I felt a stab of hunger and did not know what to do about it. How was my hunger going to be appeased? This was hell as defined by my master, an endless state of torment with no promise of relief or escape. I still had no conception that food could come one's way without a chase. These were the stages of knowing attained through suffering. I can hardly describe that kind of suffering, an emptiness, a helplessness, and a hopelessness behind the bars. Now, of course, I have got used to it after years of circus life and then the zoo. But at that time, I just had no conception of that kind of life. Bars of iron unbending and perpetually pressing against one's face. I had had no contact with any sort of metal in my life. Now this combination of man and metal subdued me. Metal which in various forms served the evil ends of man as prison bars, traps and weapons. I desperately tried to smash the bars again and again and only made my head bloody. When Captain viewed me in this state, he only laughed and remarked to his aide, "All these stupid creatures are alike. They all expect the bars of the cage to be made of butter. No harm if he learns the facts of life in his own way." And they left me alone. I began to despair when they left. When Captain showed himself outside my cage, a hope always rose in me, however slight, that some improvement was likely in my lot. That was probably the way he worked, driving me on to look on him ultimately as my savior. He was considered to be an expert